What's up, guys? Let's do a toy topic. Specifically, the one that I want to do is I want to talk about action features. So I was talking about before we do the end of year video, I want to get one more video in here, and this is it. I thought about doing an unboxing, but then I saw this topic and I was like, I kind of want to talk about that because there is something to be said for both sides. What am I talking about? Well, this is what I'm talking about right here. This is Pixel Dan, okay? We all know Pixel Dan. We all watch his show, I'm sure. I don't know, I guess, to be fair. But I do, and I know a lot of other people do. He's pretty much a massive toy guru here on YouTube. And so, of course, I follow him. Well, while following him, he posts this, and it caught my attention very quickly. The yay action features or no action features argument has really heated up with Rattler. And no matter my opinion, I'm always wrong. I get that. I very much get that. So what camp are you in? Should Motu Origins have the same action features as their vintage counterparts? This is interesting for a multitude of reasons. So first and foremost, where do I sit in this camp? And I know right off the bat, exactly like he said, you can't win this argument. No matter what side you pick, people are going to be like, bah, 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 bah. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what side I pick. He's right. I'm automatically wrong. But personally, for me, no. No, they should not have action features. But it's not that I don't understand it. Now I want to look at this in two camps here. First off, the argument for having action features. I would say it's for kids, okay? And action features is fun, and it's a thing that we grew up with, and it's a thing that we remember fondly. And we had action figures with action features. Everything from, I remember my Wolverine had little claws that actually popped out. Now Wolverine, mostly the figures that are sold today, don't. He's already got them out. Or he has two different hands, claws and not claws. That's a very normal thing now. It's a very normal thing. I remember little action features like the little arms that would like punch. I remember that. I grew up in the Ninja Turtle age, okay? That was specifically something that was very big to me. Ninja Turtles had different things like, and not that they always worked, but I had a Donatello, I remember, that worked almost every single time. You would like push him down and he would do a backflip thing and actually landed on his feet. Excuse me. That was mesmerizing for me. It was something I very much remember growing up. I remember little action features like the fact that the Batmans and whatnot would come with those guns where the missile would actually shoot. Yeah, I get it. I get the argument for action features because I'm sure, in the same way, people remember having at least one or two action figures that you filled up with water and then you squirt. Psst. We remember these things. Action features were a big part of the line. In fact, I have a brother-in-law. That's what he is now. I guess I could just call him my brother. He's my wife's sister's husband. There, okay? That's how over there we're going. Okay? So he's my brother-in-law, as far as I'm aware of, if that's how that works. And so here's the thing. He recently bought into the Superpowers line. And that is awesome. The Superpowers line is awesome. It's awesome that it came back. It's awesome that it's doing so well. It's awesome that it's a thing at all. And it's awesome enough that I bought the Superman and Batman from it. Can't wait to see the Wonder Woman because I want to get that. And I want to get the Batwing. So that's two more things in the line without a doubt that I want to buy. Am I going to go crazy and buy a bunch of things from that line? No. But he said they don't like stand the same. And actually, to be fair, Pixel Dan pointed that out too. But this is how far this reaches, is that he's not an internet personality by any means. He's just a dude, okay? And he remembers this toy line and he wanted it, so he bought the whole toy line to kind of set up in his basement where he's going to build like a theater thing. And he buys these figures and he says, yeah, they don't have the action features, so they don't quite stand the same way that they used to. And he's right. He's 100% right. They don't. I had to fix my phone real quick. So, that's an argument to be had. Some people remember the nostalgia of the action feature and they want it. And kids, of course, that grew up with the action feature remember it. The new kids, maybe they would have the exact same thing. And don't they deserve to have the exact same ideas? Don't they deserve to grow up with the same kind of memories and possibilities that we did? Don't they deserve action features? And if toys are basically mainly made for kids, then what would be wrong with that? But now I want to talk on the other end for a second. Because all of that is valid. All of that is very valid and all of that makes a lot of sense. But for not having action features, and this is the camp that I'm in, I specifically remember having figures like G.I. Joes that moved very well. Their legs moved, their thighs, that area down there at their pelvis, their head moved around, their arms went in, their arms went out, they could do like this, and they could take fighting stances and do all these things. And then I remember having a couple ninjas in the line that had like these action figure things where you'd pull their arm back, you let it go, and they'd be like, yeah, and they do with the sword. And I remember, this could just be a personal thing, I remember not liking them because their arm was always stuck at some angle. Like it was always like this. And then like you'd put it down and it'd like have to click. And then like when it clicked, it only clicked into certain positions. And then it was like a problem. And so then I remember other toys that had the same issue. Like I remember Wolverine's claws used to pop out. And I talked about how cool that was. But then came the time when the mechanism broke down and the claws didn't pop anymore. They were just always out. Or the spring messed up and they were really loose and they were just like... And then the action feature's done. And I remember having the action feature of a couple of guys where, like, a Wolverine... Yeah, it was a Wolverine and a Sabretooth that I had, where you'd hit their chest and they'd get the 3 scratches. A lot like the He-Man battle damage that I know now. And I remember there came a time when after a while that mechanism in there was done, it stopped working properly, and then they were always just stuck on the scratches. I couldn't get them back to being healed. They were always battle damaged. That bothered me. Those were little action figure problems, action feature problems that I remember. And I remember things very much like from the Superpowers line, like the Superman that would fling his arms, he would do like a punch, and then his other arm would like go back the other way or whatever. And I remember that being a problem too. Because it always seemed awkward that he always had to stand like this kind of, and I really didn't like that. So I'd like put his arm down, click, and then he was standing with both of them, but then I'd do like the punch thing, and like his one arm would go like up and one would go like way too far back or something, or like, I just remember these little things here that rattle around that I don't remember liking about action features even when I was growing up. I remember some of them were really cool, and then some of them would break, and some of them were a nuisance to the kind of the way that I liked the play. And then I think about myself as an adult collector in the lines today. And I think about Kamo Khan, who was released very recently. And he was released, he was the kind of figure that would have had an action feature. Originally, he would have sprayed like a venom from his mouth or whatever. But now he doesn't. Now he comes with an action effect that I can put on that he uses. Some characters are coming with like long tongues, or Mechanic is going to come with like a piece where you take his head off, put that thing, and then his head is really tall. And I hear people saying, well, my Mechanic actually you could expand the neck and put the neck back down, and that's what I prefer. And I can't stand the idea that my kids have to like stop playing, put the neck on, and sure. But then I can't help but fall back onto the idea that I remember a lot of the action features and whatnot. I only used them for a couple times as a gimmick when I was a kid and liked them for the most part, and then never used them again because, like, my imagination just kind of took over. After 2 or 3 times of firing the missile, I would lose the missile, but that never stopped me from having the missile. My bazookas still worked when my Joes would line up and like take the bazooka out and be like, I'm going to take out the tank, distract it. And my guy'd run out on the field like a ninja and he'd dodge some bullets like he was Solid Snake or whatever. And then shoo, bow, and blow the tank up. Like, I very much remember things like that. And I remember no longer having the action feature. I'd already lost the missile a while ago. And then I remember little action features that stuck with me even today that I wasn't able to lose. Like, I had an Exo Squad who had like a Gatling gun, and he would like put his arm out, and if you turned it, the little Gatling gun, it would go and make that click noise. And so I would do that. I'd be like click, 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 and be like, I'm shooting up all the guys. So like, I get it. I'm very much, I fall into the camp that I think it's fine, and I would prefer to have action features that are accessories. I like the idea that I now get a He-Man that comes with a lightning bolt thing that he can put his sword up and I can shoot the lightning onto it, and then I can repurpose that effect for anything else I want it to do. I can give it to a bad guy that shoots lightning, even if he doesn't shoot lightning. For some reason, Skeletor got some sort of upgrade or whatever. You get the idea. I'm just talking as if I was still playing as a kid. I would reuse the crap out of action features like that if I had them back then. But that really wasn't a thing. I don't remember characters that came with, like, fire or came with an acid thing. I remember very much like you'd fill it up with water and you'd spit the water. But in fact, I remember having an alien from Aliens, from the Alien toy line. Strangely enough, I think it was the Gorilla Alien. His head did that. His head was a squishy head, and you could put him in the water and squish him, and then and of course he'd take in the water, and you could be like, and he could like, you would hit this little 2 levers on the back, and he would open his arms, and then you would let him go, and he'd close his arms. But that also meant his arms were always closed. I couldn't like pose him or whatever, with like one arm going like this while the other like went like that or nothing, or I couldn't, that was a thing. It was an action feature, so he was stuck standing a certain way all the time. But I remember you would like open his arms up, run over, grab a guy, so you'd let the 2 things go, and you'd be like, dink, and then you kind of lift him up, and you push the back of his head, and you'd be like, psh. That was cool. I do remember these action features. But what I'm saying is there were positives and negatives to every single one of these action figures, because they also, every time there was an action feature involved, it screwed up the articulation. But on the plus, say your Mechanic guy breaks or loosens up, and his Mechanic is always so, like, you move him, or, like, you lay him down, or he goes upside down, or whatever, like, during a flip, he's like, and his neck goes, because it doesn't stay in anymore. Or you lift his head up, but now you got to hold it up, because it doesn't work anymore, because his head is too loose. Or you get the Ram Man whose little spring thing doesn't work anymore, so now you push his legs down, and he's just, which I had one of those. Sorry, I didn't have one of those. My buddy, because I used to go down the hill to a buddy named Luke. And Luke had He-Man and I had Ninja Turtles, and I would take my Ninja Turtles down there, and he had the old Gray Skull, and he had a couple of guys, and I remember he had a Ram Man, and I specifically remember him because I remember being like, why is this guy, like, always stuck in midget mode? Because when you put him down, he would go and just fall straight down into the lowest setting because something had happened to him where he no longer jumped, did the thing, and, like, you know, hit a guy or whatever, did the ram thing. That was no longer a thing he could do because his action feature was broken. And we're talking about back when I was a real little kid, too. So we're talking young enough to be like 10 or 11 years old and remembering that the action feature was already broken. and we were kids playing with toys meant for action features. But I remember being every bit as happy with the fact that my turtles just like came with weapons and then came with extra weapons like throwing stars and things like that I could just use my imagination and use. It's an interesting argument, yay or nay. I lean towards yes, but I see very clearly why people would say to have them. I personally don't want them. I prefer that my figures have effects. Sell me effects before you sell me an action feature, and I'll be 100% happy. But I would also like to admit that I see the other side, because I have a Battle Armor He-Man right now that you push his chest and it gets damaged, and that's like awesome. It's just like a thing, but it's awesome to think that you could get battle damage as you play. This is not easy to answer. And I think no matter which way you go, you're going to be on the wrong side, because people are going to say, "No, absolutely not." But like, let's be honest here, for an adult collector, if my Kamokhan actually spit water, let's say I did that like one time. Put him in the water, squeeze his head or whatever, or get his little back pushy thing, take him and I'm like, psst, psst, cool. Then I'm going to put him on the shelf, and that's it. He's done. That's it. He just goes on the shelf. Never to really be used like that again. And you could argue that, oh, well, that's you. That's you. And it is me. But it does put me in the camp where I'd rather be able to set him up where he looks like he's spraying that stuff out of his mouth, and the action feature is always present because now it's an action effect. And I prefer action effects as an adult collector rather than I enjoy action features. And like in the superpowers, I prefer them just to be figures that won't later on have problems with the action feature or stand awkwardly or have like weird gaps in the legs or something like that. And I guess I'm just being particular. But aren't we all in different ways, especially when it comes to the whole adult collecting? And like I said, you could very much argue for that your kids are going to like action features, but I could also argue that I very blatantly remember being a kid and hating certain action features. Especially, I remember sometimes like when the water thing would mess up and like the figure would like, his head would like collapse or whatever, and then it was just like stuck that way or something because something would get stuck in the little mouth part or whatever, and then it would kill the suction, and then, yeah. Interesting. Very interesting debate, because you could work this either way. Anyways, guys, I just wanted to come in. I wanted to talk about it for a minute. I wanted to say yay or nay. I personally fall on the idea I would rather have action effects than action features. But where do you fall? Maybe you see this completely different, and maybe you are in the camp that says action features were a thing. They should be a thing because this is an idea that it's the original line. But I would argue that it's not. It's a modernization of that original line. And in modernizing it, it is more common nowadays, especially with things like the fact that you have like you don't have the Ghost Rider where you click the back or whatever and he causes sparks and that makes his hair look like it's on fire. You have a really cool fire effect head and a not fire effect head, and you choose the one that you want to put on. And if you want to set a light behind him, it's just see-through enough that it could really cause a really cool effect. I'm personally in the camp that I prefer action effects because that's where we are now, and that's really where all this is moved to. And I also like things like Gundams. I like when the heat saber thing looks like it actually has like a laser blade or whatever. And I like when, like, if one of the guns or whatever, like in Star Trek, I remember liking that I got a phaser every now and then. It was like just a normal phaser, and then I got a phaser that looked like it was shooting, and I would pick the action effect I wanted. So yeah, I guess I've almost always been in the camp that likes action effects. But anyways, there's no necessarily right side to this, I personally think. But it is a heated debate sometimes, so I wanted to come in and just say yay or nay. And guys, We're pretty much here at the end of the year. I will attempt to do my end of year video as soon as I possibly can, and I'm gonna get out of here.
I have spoken. Take what you will from it.